Good morning and welcome to Gleaning and Gathering. It's me again here with you, Eric Heimlich. I'm your host, guide, friend, and all-around good guy. I'm here. Yes, I am. It's really me. Well, today I wanted to share with you some of the things that I'm gleaning about organizational doubt. This past week I listened to a podcast with Jesse DeYoung. He is a pastor at Flatirons Church, and he was sharing a fascinating model of understanding organizational doubt. And it was super helpful to me, and I took some notes on that and wanted to share that with you today. In the episode, he talked about how that 20 to 40% of most organizations are made up of quiet quitters. Now, you may have heard that term, but the idea of quiet quitting is when someone continues to collect a paycheck, but they are no longer engaged in the work of the organization. They do enough just to get by and hopefully not be noticed, but they have checked out. They are no longer engaged, and at least at an emotional level, they no longer really believe in what we're doing, whatever that may be. 10% of those can be what he calls disruptors in the organization. So they have moved from just checking out to actively endeavoring to sabotage the organization that they're still connected to. And so that obviously has huge implications for organizations, and you can't have nearly half of your people quiet quitting and be able to get the same amount of activity, whatever it is that your organization does, and get that done if you have all of that dead weight and people even actively pulling in the other direction. And so it's really important to address doubts early. And as unresolved doubts escalate, it continues to weigh further and further on the organization as a whole. These are the 5 levels that he outlined, and I thought it was fascinating and just wanted to share it with you. The first level is suspended doubt, or no doubt. It's complete confidence in the organization. I'm sure that we're doing the right things the right way. Level 2 is operational doubt. I have questions about the efficiency of our processes. I'm not sure we're doing things the right way. And so if it was a church, just to give an example, you could say, hey, I'm not really sure that having a fog machine and, the lights that we're doing is really the best way. I think maybe there might be a better way to do that. And so as an operational doubt, you might say, I'm just not sure about that. I think there might be a better way to engage people than just having a fog machine. Then the next level is ideological doubt. And so it's when we doubt what we are doing in general. And so you have concerns about the mission, the relevance of the organization. It's no longer just, is there a better way than having a fog machine? It's no, I'm not really sure that we are doing the right thing. I mean, look at this. We have fog machines. And I'm really not sure that, the early church would have endorsed fog machines. And I have a real problem with this. Ideologically, I'm not sure we're headed in the right direction. I'm concerned about the direction that we're going. So ideological doubt is the next level. And that leads to ethical doubts. It's doubting who is leading. And so ethical doubts, level 4, is doubt about the integrity or the capability of our leadership. We have leaders that are putting fog machines in our services, probably because they want to attract more people so that they can get more money. And for them, I'm not really sure that their hearts are even in the right place. Because look, we have fog machines. What people do this? So that's the thing, ethical doubts, beginning to doubt who is doing this. And then that leads to level 5, which is absolute doubt. It's pervasive doubt affecting all aspects of the organization. It's when we doubt everything. And so absolute doubt, he says, is a level from which there is no recovery. But he says answering the right questions in the right way can help people to come back from all other levels of doubt. And so when we don't address doubt in our organization, it's always going to progress to the next stage. People are never going to stay just where they are. They're always going to progress further. And he says the deeper the doubt, the more internal tension that there's going to be in terms of what the person is feeling. A person's inner level of doubt is always going to be one level deeper than whatever they're outwardly expressing. And so if they're just expressing operational doubt, they probably have actual inside ideological doubts. They're not sure about our mission. And so if someone is expressing ethical doubts, most likely they're already at absolute doubt. That's really important to know as well, that whatever they're expressing outwardly, they're probably already one level deeper internally. It was super helpful for me to understand, because I think it's impossible for us as leaders to be able to really move an organization forward if we are not aware of what people are really feeling and thinking about the organization where we're working. I think that if you understand this, if you understand that in your organization, 20 to 40% of the people that you see every day have already checked out, addressing that proactively and beginning to go after that is absolutely part of your job as a leader. You can't just let this go. You can't just take a pass on this. And so I think that his book, Rebuilding a Team Culture That Was Broken, super helpful. Again, Jesse DeYoung, I'll link to this in the show notes. But it's definitely a book that I would recommend, and also a concept that I think as a leader you need to be thinking about. So that was lesson 1, Gleaned. The next set of lessons came from another podcast on the Carrie Nyhoff Show, Ian Morgan Crone, and you can find his stuff at ianmorgancrone.com. Crone is spelled C-R-O-N. He has a book called The Fix, and just recently released, and some of the thoughts that came out in that: your mess is the message. So again, people will identify with your weaknesses. They may appreciate your strengths, but they identify with your weaknesses. There's just some great learning that can come when people open up and are willing to be vulnerable and share what they're going through. Those are the stories that have been the most helpful to me. And he shared some of his journey. Some of the coaching questions that I wrote down that I'm planning to use along the way. What do you not want me to ask you about today? Great question. Many times the things that we don't want asked are the things that we need to be asked. Here's another one. How would your wife describe how you're really doing? Again, trying to get outside of yourself, outside of your own head, and see, how am I really doing? But how would your wife or your husband describe how you're doing? What would you do if you weren't afraid? One of his friends asked him this when he was facing a crisis, and he was describing what was going on and what he was facing and what he was dealing with. And his friend asked him this question: what would you do if you weren't afraid? And he told him, he said, well, I would do this, and I would call this person, and I would make this decision. He said, okay, do that and call me in 2 hours. There are times when we know what we need to do, but what would you do if you weren't afraid? And then another great question: how do you want this story to end? You know, many times when we're in the middle of something, we don't know how it's going to end. But how do you want it to end? What are the things that you can do right now to affect your life? You're not just a spectator in your life. You're living it. This is your life. The choices that you are making matter. And so how do you want this story to end? You talked a little bit about the kinds of addictive behaviors, and one of those is workaholism. He defined it this way: workaholism is when you over-identify who you are and your value as a human being with what you do. I thought that was incredibly helpful, and I think there's a lot of people, including me, that has suffered from workaholism. But identifying who you are and your value as a human being with what you do. I know for me, many years, my life was made up of that kind of situation. I am the executive director. I am the pastor. And what happens when you no longer wear that hat? many times your identity, if it's wrapped up in that, and your value is found in that, and you're no longer that, you go through a crisis. And I did. And recognizing that my value is not in what I do, but it is in who God says I am, that I have value, whether or not I can produce something or not, is a huge step in a journey that I'm still on. But I'm thankful that God is teaching me as I continue to walk. One of the last lessons that I gleaned this week, I've taken the Working Genius assessment a few years ago, and there are 6 working geniuses. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this assessment, Patrick Lencioni is just a brilliant author, and he came up with this assessment a few years ago, and it's super helpful in looking at your team to see how are we wired. There are 2 working geniuses. There's 2 things that you're competent in, and then 2 things that are your working frustration. The first working genius is wonder, and it's the ability to ask questions. It's where everything starts, and most people who ask questions are not really rewarded for it. I wonder why this is. That's where it starts. Every solution starts with wonder. But many times it's the hardest working genius because it is so underappreciated. The second working genius is invention. And it's the genius of coming up with a way to do something that will solve whatever problem was identified in that wonder. And then there's discernment. It's the gift of evaluating things. And so using instincts, patterns, recognition, gut feeling to make judgments about an idea. The gift of discernment I've seen in my setting is super valuable. I really, really appreciate. I don't have that working genius. I wish I did sometimes. My working geniuses are invention and galvanizing. And so having someone who can help me in this area of discernment is super important, who can help me vet ideas. I can come up with 100 ideas. And that's the challenge, is that, how do you pick between the 100 to find the 1 or the 2 that we actually need to be getting people behind? Because for me, many times, invention and galvanizing almost go together. It's kind of like this podcast. I'll invent it and it'll be out here later this morning without much discernment. And so there are times when, I'm coming up with a solution, I'm sharing it, and I'm already on the road to galvanizing people towards it without really stopping to say, is this really what we should do? So my wife has this strength as well. I'm pretty sure she's not taken the test, but I can see this gift in her life. And so sharing those things with her, taking time to be with her and bounce those ideas off and get her reaction to it is super helpful. And so the fourth working genius is galvanizing. And it's the strength of being able to get people together behind the idea. Whatever it is, that invention, that idea, okay, hey, we could do it this way. It's been discerned. Now we're going to get people behind it and make it happen. That's the super fun part for me. It's the marketing of it. It's the sharing the party. It's getting people excited about it and getting people to rally around the idea, whatever that is. That leads to the last 2 steps of implementation. And the first step there is enablement. Enablement is the strength of helping. It's those people that, if anyone asks me for help today, I will be so excited to say yes. I've got a friend. He, I'm sure, has the working genius of enablement, and we all call him Helper Hank. He's an Enneagram 2. He loves helping people, and it's wonderful, except that he gets pulled into all kinds of projects and helping with all kinds of things that he doesn't have time for. It was a couple years ago that his wife asked him for Christmas to give her the gift of 1,000 no's. To say no to 1,000 things the next year. It works out to about 3 a day. And so to say 3 no's every day for him was his gift to her for the year. Enablement is a wonderful strength, and you need people who are going to come alongside you and help you get things done. And then the last working genius is tenacity. It's the strength of saying, what do we need to do to get this done? And these are the people that love finishing. For them, leaving something undone, leaving something half done is just anathema. They've got to get it to the finish line. And so the people with tenacity are the ones who are like, okay, I hear what you've started, but how are we going to finish this? Those are wonderful folks. Tenacity is definitely on my working frustration list. I do not have tenacity, but I am very thankful for the people who do and are able to get things to the finish line. One of the lines in this podcast that Patrick Lencioni said was, life is a team sport. You know, the truth of it is that all of us have things we're really good at, and we have other things that we're not really good at. And so when we partner together with other people who have different working geniuses, together we are better than any one of us individually. Having people who can think about, I wonder why this is, and then ask the questions, is the reason that we're able then to invent things that will solve those problems. And then having people, after that the idea has been invented, to be able to discern, is this the right way to do this? Is this actually the way that would be best? Before we move to galvanizing is super important. And then having people who are able to rally people together around a cause and to galvanize them towards that. Again, super important. And then enablement, people that are willing to help fill in the cracks, do the details, and then those who have tenacity, those who are willing to get it to the finish line. All of those are important. And when they all work together, it's amazing what can be done. So life is a team sport, and I am very thankful for the team members that I have in the various aspects of my life that are helping make things happen, both at Victory Acres and at Heartland Christian School. And so whatever you're working on right now, I encourage you to think about this idea of working genius. There is an assessment, and you can go and take that, see what your personal working genius may be. Those are a few of the things that I'm gleaning this week. I am speaking this morning at the Central Indiana Youth Convention in Indianapolis, and there's a lot to do, a lot to prepare for. That's a little bit of what's going on in my life right now. And I look forward to hearing from you along the journey for Gleaning and Gathering. God bless.